You ready for another podcast, my man?
Man, I was, just doing my 95th Skype update here in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, where?
Gosh, yeah. Every time I change an outlet or a USB port, it totally sends my thing haywire. But those are the kind of links we have to go to produce podcasts.
Huge links.
Yeah, huge links to produce this podcast. I mean, what an issue. No, welcome, Crushing Iron Triathlon Podcast, episode 253.
Yeah, 253, yeah. Man.
I'm still batting in the 900s for the year. We thank you for joining us. It has been a wonderful ride so far here. Probably say a little over 2.5 years every Monday and Thursday. We appreciate you joining us. For those of you that, I do have to say this, for those of you that do subscribe and hit us up and listen a lot, we do for some reason have quite a few of you that listen to us. We have about 600,000 downloads to prove that. If you like us and you listen, take a minute, pull out the old iPhone or Android and give us a review on iTunes. Takes 2 seconds, but it's much appreciated. It helps other athletes find us. They're looking for podcasts, and you don't necessarily have to write one. You can just give your feedback via the star version, 1 through 5, 5 being superb, 1 being we just don't wet your palate, and give it a chance. So,
but yeah, give it a chance first.
Yeah, but give it a chance first.
Yeah, and also been listening, or it's your first time, or whatever, if you're in the public group of the public Crushing Iron group, you can get into our closed group, which is where all the action really happens, and just by searching Crushing Iron group on Facebook, and you'll kind of get a better feel for what's going on in this whole group of people and our athletes and all that kind of stuff. Good people.
Yeah, it's
positive attitude, none of the snarkiness, or not none, but
limited and tenderized.
Yeah.
Occasional sarcasm, but
more supportive in our. I feel like than more of the public groups out there.
Very, very supportive, very open, and willing to help other athletes out without making you feel like an idiot, which is basically every other triathlon forum. It's either all about me, or it's let me see how dumb I can make you feel. Yeah. By asking a simple question. So we don't do that, nor do we allow it. So you can always hop in there. And then if you just want more information on the rest of the things we do, you can just go head over to crushingiron.com and check it out. Plenty of things to sift through. Lots of content, a good amount of knowledge, and quite a few things that we offer. So we are here. We're on week 2 also of March Madness. And I'm going to give you the floor for a second to wave goodbye to your Wisconsin Badgers and the season that they've had.
Yes. I don't know why, but I opened up the little note sheet that I have here and, put the...
Whoa. Wait, stop. You make notes for these?
Well, I take notes. I take loose notes.
Okay, I was going to say, we've been doing this for, 2.5 years, and I have never known you to be the driving these notes out, but I guess I need to step my game up.
No, yeah. We don't, I take little bullet points, but
okay,
we kind of go into these. We talk a lot, so we kind of have our finger on the pulse of what's going on, with a lot of the athletes, what's going on in the community with triathlon, and time of year, and we usually know where we're kind of going. And but today, I just sort of, without even discussing it with you, tentatively called this podcast "The Fork in the Road" for some reason, and I think it's because. I think it's because my Badgers lost. I think I can't really, I don't know. It's a weird thing that you get that kind of wrapped up in it, and then it just sucks the life out of you. You kind of invest it's sort of, we make a lot of analogies, and I think that's the way to learn, but it's this whole, you invest your whole season in this thing, and then one game, it just sucks it right away, and then it's done. Your hopes are gone and buried, and I got to thinking about it. Technically, Wisconsin isn't the most athletic team ever, and it really defined something for me because I thought about it a lot on my drive home. When you're not as athletic or strong or talented maybe as the person you're playing against or running against, you always hear the saying, that saying, yeah, that dude's just got another gear.
Mm-hmm.
What it started to really kind of click with me is like, okay, so say if you're guarding somebody who has more athleticism and strength and quickness, you got to go at 90% just to keep up with his 80.
Yeah.
He's going 80% the whole game, and then by the end of the game, he cranks it up to his 90 or 95, and you just don't have any more gears. It's not that, you know what I mean? So it's like that's the illusion, is that they're playing the same way that you are the whole game, but they're not. They're putting out a little bit less effort. And I just started thinking about how that really compares to triathlon and that whole 80, 70, 90, thing.
In terms of people's just normal athletic ability or the amount of training that they put in?
Well, like if you're a better athlete than me, yeah, that's too. There's variables. Don't get me wrong, because you got to, if you're in good shape. But if you're a better athlete than me, and we start our marathon, and I have to go 90% just to keep up with your 80%, eventually I'm going to fade.
Yeah, but I think endurance sports is one of those ones where, because it's so north-south, and I think natural athletic ability always plays into it. Always. And what I mean by athletic ability, I don't mean like someone who was born naturally athletic. I mean, for me as a coach, anytime the athletes that I've worked with or I do work with that have past athletic experience, as in just competing in general sports, usually have a totally different mindset and approach when it comes to training and racing. And I think, so I definitely see what you're saying in terms of athletic ability, but in triathlon, where it's an endurance training event, I think the mental and emotional aspect that athletes have, or the experiences that they have and the mindset that they have, is oftentimes that's the biggest differentiator between the different levels and that they can reach both within training and the course of their career. But on race day, I think it comes more down to the mental and emotional experience and overcoming things and having those experiences versus just I'm a raw talent. And of course there is those, there are those raw talents, but then again, I think also a lot of times you'll find those some athletes have that raw, I don't even call it raw talent because I think that term's like really overused. A lot of those athletes, to the same extent, never fully reach their potential because they always solely rely on their ability to be a quote unquote athlete. Because I work with many athletes who are good athletes. I wouldn't consider them great in terms of just natural skill, but they are incredibly smart and work very, very hard and make great decisions. And those are all the things I think any coach will look for over just, what people like to say is natural athletic ability. Because when it comes down to it as well, they don't, a natural person or person who just relies on their quote unquote athletic ability sometimes doesn't make always the best decisions. And so I'll always take an athlete who is smart and works really hard, because most of the time those end up being the best recipe for a really, really successful season and making a really successful athlete, and obviously turning out usually the most successful races. And I think that's just, it's really over the term athletic, I think, is widely overrated in general because people have, because athletic is the same, it offers the same kind of relative definition as fast. Your definition of fast is probably still different from my definition of fast. And that, you ask two different athletes behind like a closed door, right? Tell me what to you is considered fast. One person might say 8:30s. The next person might say 6 minutes, 6-minute miles. And the other person might say 10 minutes. Yeah. So it's all relative on that spectrum. And so I think, the term athleticism, I'm not athletic enough to do this, I think I definitely don't want to say it's a stigma, but I think it's one of the most overrated applications that we give towards people or requirements to participate in sport. That is a gigantic deterrent, that you have to be a quote unquote athlete. Like, first of all, what is an athlete?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, really. I mean, when I say, my example, I was kind of saying that all other things being equal, like these guys are working hard in practice and they're not skipping, you know what I mean? They're they're playing. They're doing everything the same, but maybe one has a little bit more ability or whatever. Natural, and you're right. It's like, because I think about that too. It's like, what is athleticism? Is it just that you go to the combine and you can jump out of the gym, so that means you should be drafted high? No, I think so many other variables come into being a good athlete. It's just understanding the game, being in the right position. It's a wide range.
I mean,
but most people just think about jumping and running.
Exactly. Like, and again, like there's that like huge definition. Who is the greatest athlete on the planet? And then you're going to get a million different answers, because athleticism should and can span like every single type of, not just sporting event that people, but even the ones that people don't consider sports. Like, you could take an athlete in one sport and ask them to go participate in another, and they would fail and look absolutely terrible doing it, because it's a different sport. It's a different focus. And so again, I think the term athleticism and athlete is so overrated and overused. And I also think that in two ways. I think one is sometimes it's looked at towards triathletes take that as a limiter, and if you're listening and you're just getting into the sport, or we have a lot of listeners who are thinking about getting in the sport, dabbling in it. It's also like the same phrase that I'm not athletic enough, or the other phrase, I'm just not a runner. Like, what do you mean you're just not a runner? Like, you could go, if I asked you to go run right now, you could. So again, what's your definition of quote unquote being a runner? And I think that a lot of times people use that as like they use those phrases to convince themselves that they can't, either because of past experiences or definitions people have given them, or ways they haven't been able to succeed in the past. But everyone is an athlete if they want to be. And it's all about what you choose, and the energy and the effort and the time you choose to harness. Honestly, some of the greatest and most successful triathletes that I know personally, if I asked them to go out and like play basketball or do a sport, they would look like an absolute fool. So tell me again what an athlete is. And I think you can choose to be an athlete within your sport. And take the term as a triathlete. You're doing 3 different sports as an athlete. So yeah, if you're doing triathlon, then you are an athlete. And so I think that we use that as a limiter again to prevent ourselves from moving forward in certain conversations when it comes to training. I'm not athletic enough to do this, or I'm not athletic enough to ride a bike. Like, hello. You probably all did it when you were 6. So yeah, you're athletic enough to ride a bike. You're athletic enough to run in the mailbox. And as long as, we can get you to point A to point B without drowning, then yeah, you're athletic enough to swim. And so I think that, it's a mindset. I think athleticism and being an athlete is a mindset more than it is a physical ability, or a physical expression of what you're the most inspired by and passionate about at the moment, which is again why you can see some quote unquote athletes go from like different sports to a totally different sport and still be good at it. Is it because they're a great natural athlete, or is it because they have characteristics that make up really, really good traits that you would want to have to perform well in sports? And I think that's kind of the question that every triathlete and runner and cycloswimmer needs to have is it so much the ability? Because a lot of people also use that as an excuse. I've just never been an athlete, so I can't. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I know and have worked with people who have never played a sport ever in their entire life. Besides, like, some before they were the age of 8, which, to be fair, that doesn't really count, because you're kicking a soccer ball, and then you stop and you start picking weeds, looking for 4-leaf clovers and chasing butterflies. So I'm talking about, middle school, high school, college sports, they just play them. But they pick up triathlon and they have this mindset of
performing really well. I mean, you see it a lot of times with really successful people in business that are entrepreneurship. Like they're dialed in, they're focused, they have benchmarks, they know how to manage their time, and they don't like to fail. And so they do really, really, really well. So it's not about like the athleticism. It's about or you've always been good at sports. No, that's not the case for a lot of people either. And so, again, I think it's a mindset. And if you work hard and you're smart and you love what you do, those three things alone will almost always trump someone who you might consider under the label of really, really athletic or just natural ability. Yeah, do I think some people are more predisposed to have better coordination or be geared more towards, their morphology, the way their body type? Like you might look at a person, you'd be like, okay, if I had to take a pick, would I pick, Sean Johnson, or whatever her name is, the really, gymnast of a couple years ago, or whatever her name is, take a gymnast that's 4'10".
Mm-hmm.
Or you see somebody who's got Michael Phelps body type, and you look at them and you're like, all right, if I had to guess, I'd probably say you're probably going to be the better gymnast. And you're not going to say that to Michael Phelps, who's like super tall, lanky, long torso, orangutan arms, like perfect, morphology to be or to have the ability to be a swimmer. Like I have a nephew who is super tall with a Michael Phelps, body style. And what I wouldn't say to him is like, you know what? You would be the perfect left guard. So I think that we do have these like inherent genetic, predispositions to being more able to perform better within natural abilities. And I see that a lot with swimming. Is everyone assumes that swimming, like if we take ability and we drill it down to how do you work within one sport? And I've always talked about this with athletes that I work with, is I might have a gymnast style swimmer, a gymnast height swimmer. So you're somebody who's really, really short. The applications and the things I'm trying to address with them on how to swim fast is going to be totally different than an athlete who has a natural long torso, long arms, because everyone is built different. It doesn't mean that you can't produce the same result, but I will tell you that it's going to look totally different. Your stroke is going to look totally, and that's why it's so much misinformation. Look at Michael Phelps. He's swimming long and strong, and he gets to the other end of the pool in 8 strokes.
Yeah. 8
strokes is the perfect stroke rate for Olympic world-class swimmer, so that's what I should have. Newsflash, you're 5'5" with T-Rex arms. So that's probably not going to work out very well for you. You're going to take 8 strokes and you're going to be done. So again, there's different parts of your body style that, again, play a part in how you're built. You can take cycling as the same thing. You see cyclists, if you watch a Tour de France on that level, you see athletes built like Peter Sagan, and you're like, probably not going to be a great hill climber. And then you see him totally like huffing and puffing in the Pyrenees because he weighs probably, 50 more pounds than some of the other, mountain climb cyclists, and he's built differently. And the same could be said for the athletes who are super skinny and they're natural better climbers. And then runners the same way. Are you better off on a long straightaway, long flat courses? Like, we have an athlete, Ross Kaffenberger, super tall guy. His run stride and run strengths are going to be totally different than a person who's 5'2". And you probably ask, a guy like that, would you rather have a flat course and use the length of your stride, or would you rather be working really, really hard uphill on an uphill course? And how do you? Because you're going to have to, you're going to be carrying more weight up it, and so there's so many different things to take into account, and there's so many also ways to figure out how your natural build and natural strengths can be used to propel you forward within a sport, within triathlon or within other sports, and I think that, again, it just comes down to not trying to, we talk about this all the time too, is not trying to make expectations built on other people. in the way that they can do things. And people do this all the time. Like they do it with Michael Phelps and his, long and strong stroke rate. The fact that he's, a foot taller with, 9-inch, longer arms doesn't mean anything to anybody. The same thing was done back in the 80s and 90s when everybody was obsessed with a 9,500 cadence because Lance Armstrong did it.
Yeah, I remember that. I talk to people about that all the time.
It's the most idiotic thing in the world. It has been proven over and over again that it's not the case, and it's definitely not the most efficient for longer distance and endurance distance triathlon. But people jump to that, but because maybe that's best for him. And so I think a lot of times the way we try to fit into an athletic mold, or what we see, whether it's your friends that you see as athletes or people you look up to who are athletes or people you see on social media who consider athletes, is now we consider ourselves not an athlete because they have these attributes and they've been able to capitalize on what I believe are everyone has natural strengths. And you're geared more towards being a stronger person at X, Y, and Z than you would be at A, B, and C. And it's not, and so I think utilizing that and figuring out what those are, let's say like different horses for different courses, is again is going off on like why a lot of people think that the Ironman World Championship should be moved and rotated, is because is it the ultimate is the ultimate race, the ultimate day under those specific conditions? Because what if there's an athlete who's an incredible athlete who always performs really, really, really well, but for some reason they're just a little bit bigger than other athletes? Because in order to perform well in really, really high heat, then most of the time you'll find that like you can't be super tall and you can't weigh a lot. But if you take them on another course, they might slaughter everyone else. And so even conditions. Do you race well in heat? Do you race well in the cool weather? So there's so many things to take into account, and I think it's a great discussion to have, even if we obviously had no intention of going this direction. Is listening to and paying attention to your natural abilities, and I say abilities over athletic potential, because we all have abilities and tendencies to be better at specific things, just given the way that we are, the way that our brain works, the way that our body works, and the way that we're built. And we're more likely to be successful doing these specific style races or these races than you would be doing others. Mm-hmm. And again, that's the age-old question, is like battling between, athletic or not. It's like sometimes it's you just haven't found you just haven't fit into your perfect peg of a race, but you have to be willing to explore, and you have to be able to recognize and realize, all right, I'm a strong swimmer, so do I need to look for easy swim races? Probably not. And so there's so many things taken into account, but it's about having a discussion and being objective, and then knowing yourself and thinking, okay, you know what? Is this a really, really good race for me? And based on my strengths and weaknesses, is this the best race for me and where I am? And I think answering those questions will really help and can lead athletes to having a better season and really figuring out their ultimate level of performance or ceiling if they take all those into account and understand. Because you could go to this, you could argue the same way on like people who, and I tell athletes this, I'm like, that sounds like a great race, I feel like it's a good idea. Just so you know, if you're picking between these two, this course is incredibly technical, and you've been training on the trainer a lot. You self-admitted that you're really not that comfortable with taking corners very well and adjusting well, and you're not very great on, like Wisconsin, perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's probably the most, with Lake Placid up there, it's probably the most technical of the full distance triathlon, the iron races in North America. And I think we had this discussion with Starkey when he was on. I think he said something like maybe 5 or 6 minutes, something like that. He could gain by just knowing the corners, and and taking them in and out and better, and and you're being a great bike handler, you can gain minutes on somebody else. And so again, like if you have to take those into account versus, okay, maybe I'm not the best bike handler in the world, so maybe even though I want to do that race, if I want to find my true potential and race as fast as I'm capable of, maybe I need to find a race with a longer straightaway, with less turns, less gear shifting, and work towards your strengths. Don't just get caught up in what everyone else is doing or what you think might work, and then be so self-critical on your performance when you haven't looked yourself and realized what's the best case scenario for me, and that's what you should do.
Whew.
Yeah.
Went down a different road.
Right.
Well,
you talk
the
about
fork in the road, baby.
I just put down like 20 forks.
A lot of forks. That makes sense. I mean, Wisconsin's usually my best race, and I always try and think about why that is. I mean, it not necessarily, but I feel like I'm pretty solid up there, and I think it's because of that. What you're just talking about, maybe, is that I grew up mountain biking, and the bike course feels more enjoyable to me. Like I'm not a big sit and arrow guy. That kind of gets on my nerves, and I don't know if that's because of maybe the fact that I did play sort of. Like basketball or baseball and things like that growing up, where you're getting out of the not necessarily getting out of the saddle, but you're changing up your cadence. You're doing all kinds of different stuff all the time. Maybe that makes sense. And plus, I just like wetsuit races really suit me well. It's about my lower half doesn't want to stay up as clean for some reason. But anyway, the Tennessee Vols, you want to talk about them or want to wait for them?
We
want to take a little break, or we rolling on this topic? I mean, this is a great topic, though, because...
I think I'll talk about the Vols at the end.
Okay. Yeah, they...
I mean, honestly, let me talk about them just real quick.
Okay.
Way too overdramatic. I didn't like what I saw. But if they're engaged the whole time and it's a close game, then I like it. I just think they got distracted. They got a little bit complacent, which that kind of goes on the coach, but it also more so goes on the leaders on the team to not get complacent.
Well,
but we're in the Sweet 16. We're taking on the Boilermakers. I coach a lot of Boilermaker fans, so when we beat y'all by 12, I'm going to make a comment in Training Peaks and say I told you so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know you got something real quick, but then we can go back to this topics.
No, I just think there is a lesson there somewhere, the distracted piece too. It's so easy to get kind of lose your way and forget where you're going, and the next thing you know, you're up 20 and you're down, you're even.
You see that happen all the time and this is probably our good segue back into our topic, is you see that a lot on courses that don't take a lot of attention.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like you can totally zone out, and because you're not having to be reactionary. And we've all seen this. And yeah, I mean, triathletes have a horrible reputation for being just god-awful bike handlers. And a lot of it's fair. But you'll see it on, like, straightaways. They get so, like, we see them too when we ride with people or even friends. We'll go ride on the Trace. 440 miles. Perfect asphalt. Cars always give you a ton of room because it's a national bike path, so cars are required by law to pass you in the total opposite lane, and it's just a perfect place to ride. It's one of the best places to ride in the country, and I think you and I probably have done this before on our own. I know I have. Is you get out past the hills and you get on the flats, and you don't even have to look up more than like a foot in front of you, because there's no potholes, there's no red lights. Unless you're, like somebody like Starkey, you're not going to come up behind another car just on your bike. Like you can just keep your head down. But if you're not alert, and you're not paying attention, and you're not ready to react, then by the time you catch up from being so complacent and so having your senses kind of like lulled into sleep, then by the time you want to react, it's too late. And that's kind of what happened in the Vols. Is by the time they wanted to react, it was almost too late. For them to kind of catch up, and they almost got beat. But that happens a lot, on races like Ironman Florida or even Ironman Chattanooga, because there's not terrible amount of turns. It's like you get people just focused on staring at their Garmin or focusing on the road, and they'll decide to swerve right and left, or they have one little pothole and their day's over because they've just kind of lulled into not always kind of staying on point
Yeah.
and being ready. But no, I think it is. I think it's always a good time to talk about what makes for choosing your best race, how to utilize. Because let me be honest, man, like it's something that you should always. And I think that athletes, we kind of give each other a hard time about it, and like, oh, you're just going to do Augusta or Chattanooga 70.3 because of the swim, because it's super chill and it's super easy and you just don't want to put the time in the swim. You're just not naturally a good swimmer. Well, you know what? The same argument could be said for somebody who picks a race that's super flat and because they don't think they're good at hills. So there's different courses for different horses, and that's also what makes it so exciting and fun to go to. And again, why you can't always judge your PRs based on your best performances, because you go to a race like Augusta, which is like the worst town ever, but you go to a place like Augusta and like have a lightning fast swim and race, and then you go to another race course that's infinitely like harder and you may place higher in your age group. Anyway, it's a good conversation to have with this time of year and looking at yourself and being honest, if I really want to get the best out of myself and I really want to see myself put on my best performance, I need to be A, healthy, B, I need to be really have gained and reach the best level of my fitness. But then where is my best opportunity to apply it to see my best overall result? And how do my strengths go against, and how can they be weighed against other athletes in my age group, or at the top or in the middle or even at the back, against other people's strengths and weaknesses, or just what I naturally see as mine? So like, for me, I need to look for really difficult swims to help me out, to give myself a benefit or gain me time against the field, against what I would consider gaining extra time. And then you look at the bike course. Does it have a lot of turns? Does it not have a lot of turns? How are the roads? The little things like that, people never take into context until you bring it up. And I have to do this on like almost a daily basis with athletes who ask about specific events, because maybe they're already signed up for them, or they're ready to do them, or they're like, hey, but maybe I can pick up this event, and thinking about timing. But it's like, all right, you've got swimming. You've got, is it wetsuit legal? Is it not wetsuit legal? Is it downstream? Is it not downstream? Is it open water in a lake? Is it ocean? Is it river? Does it have a chance to be windy? Is the swim course usually long? Is the course a lot of turns? Those are a lot of questions just to ask about your first 30 to 40 minutes in the race in the water for a 70.3.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to look at, let's take two great examples, and maybe I'll just go down the list, and I'll kind of give a side by side comparison of races, swim, bike, and run. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, man.
I don't know if this goes against your notes for the day.
The only thing I got on here is candy bar discussion.
Okay, we'll end with dessert.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, you take a swim course like Chattanooga, and then you want to take a swim course like Muncie or Ohio 70.3, which are almost identical in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Chattanooga 70.3, you're looking at maybe, if not the fastest swim ever. 2 turns, basically. So if you're not a very good swimmer, and again, when people hear fast courses, there's a lot to take into consideration when people consider fast courses. And again, it's also about applying the version of fast to what your strength is. So swimming, Chattanooga 70.3, super easy swim. This last year was like 2 turns. It wasn't even like 200 yards upstream, like I think it's noted on the website. It's like 2 yards. Then you take a turn to the island, then you take your last turn, and you basically take 15 strokes, and you're at the end. Super easy, very, very chill. Not a lot of traffic because it's a rolling start. Plenty of room, wetsuit legal, float your way down, easy to sight, not a lot of turns. You should come out feeling fresh as a freaking daisy. Flip side, Muncie 70.3, Ohio 70.3. we've gotten late enough into the year. Whereas, and again, things you need to think about. Do you like swimming in a wetsuit or do you not like swimming in a wetsuit? So what races in water and swim courses gear towards that comfortability? Muncie, for whatever reason, because of the nature of that reservoir, is always kind of borderline the last few years. Even though it might be wetsuit legal in the water, the last 2 years it's been hot as all get out there. And so it's like, do I want to overheat? Do I not want to overheat? And then it's open water in a lake. Can sometimes be choppy with the wind, but it's a more technical. Same with Ohio. It's a much more technical swim than other swims are, and it's always proven to be long. Example, I swam. I think to give you kind of comparison. I think at Chattanooga 7.3, I swam like 20 or 21 minutes, and was like fourth in my age group. Ohio 70.3, I think I'm fairly confident I was first in my age group out of the water, but with like a time of like 32 or 33 minutes. So you can see the huge difference. I mean, like night and day. And so again, like if you go back to thinking, like for me, what's the best course for me and my ability and just my natural strengths, which are open water swimming. I gain advantage because of my experience in open water and my comfortability in open water. I gain a lot of I was second out of the water in my age group and 30th overall with a 31:25 swim. So definitely longer than Chattanooga.
Yeah, and I bet the 10th place guy was a lot further back there than they were at Chattanooga.
Another outstanding point that I was going to bring up is that, again, like those are all things that like that if you're, and obviously it depends on like what you're going for beginning or the ends of, races, and are you trying to be really, really competitive or not competitive? And so, so I was fifth in my age group in Chattanooga with a 21:51. So as you can see, a 10-minute difference, but I was three. And again, it's all about competition. But it's no wetsuit in Ohio. Again, a strength of mine, and a much more technical course, and no wetsuit, and sunlight. And so weigh those against each other, on what's going to be best for you. So, and you're going to have to kind of break these down on a spreadsheet or on a sheet of paper or whatever, and kind of weigh out pros and cons. So you got the swim. What's my best swim scenario? Here's what it should look like. Okay, perfect, done. Bike, which is usually what people take, because it takes the longest and it's always longest. But this is what people consider, and if it's a quote unquote fast bike, something like Muncie, again, Ohio, there are plenty of other races that are like, oh, that's a super fast course, because they consider the bike course to be the end-all be-all equalizer. Muncie, Ohio, if you're not a very good bike handler, if you're not very good in hills, if you have only been on the trainer for a while, and you're super comfortable and you have a really, really awesome aero position, maybe you're a heavier athlete who doesn't do well on climbs, but it can just, on flat courses doesn't matter as much. Ohio, a course like Ohio and Muncie is 100% without question you. Minimal turns, no technical areas, no hills. You can be aero the entire time. It's perfectly paved asphalt. So, yes, does that sound good for a regular run-of-the-mill TT super, fast aero guy, regardless of weight? Absolutely. But if you're a really strong cyclist, I would tell you to go to a place like Wisconsin 70.3, where it's hilly, it's been hot, and the roads are absolute crap. A lot of athletes will tell you that they're more sore from riding that course from the road conditions than they are from riding it with their legs. And so, again, those are things you need to take into account. How are the roads around me? How does my body and my bike handling absorb that? Wisconsin, full Ironman Wisconsin, it can be a little bit rough in sections, and some people don't have the body type to be able to withstand that kind of pounding. and nor do they have experience with it. And so you got to look at your ability and to be able to absorb turns, heat, hills, road conditions, all these things you need to think about. That's how you choose a bike course. And again, it's just one small part of it. Like a Wisconsin 70.3 bike course versus one like Muncie or Ohio, which are very, very similar. Gulf Coast, which is pancake flat as well. Super chill, bike course where you can just put your head down and never look up. Then you got Lake Placid 70.3, other ones that are more technical with hills. And then you hop on the run and you're like, all right, what kind of runner am I? Am I great with flat courses? Am I great with out and backs? Do I prefer loops? Do I like hills? Do I like heat? Do I not like heat? Is this all on asphalt? Is this not all on asphalt? Is some of it off road? Is there a lot of wind coming off of it? And so there are so many different races like that. Chattanooga 70.3, because we love that race to go to a lot. Not a very forgiving run course, and it can be hot. And if you haven't had the time to acclimate, it can be brutal because that road course is hilly. It is not friendly. Then you go to a place like Muncie, which is the same. I remember it's funny if you just do Muncie now, you haven't done it for a while. They used to advertise the Muncie run course as flat, which is laughable. It's brutal. It's rolling with like no shade, and it's usually hot as all get out.
Yeah, the road was, at least it used to be rough.
Yeah, and so it's like, again, that's something you got to take into consideration. Is there a lot of crowd support or is there not a lot of crowd support? Does that crowd support fuel you? Does it take away? Do you like the pressure? Do you like to go out alone? Because if you like to be alone, go to Muncie. Chattanooga, there's people everywhere. And there's hills, and there's turns, and there's uphills, and there's downhills. And so what am I best? What's my bike? So you got to take my best swim, my best bike, my best run, and now you have to kind of do mix and match. You're probably not going to find the perfect race that is perfect for all of your different attributes. But you need to pick and choose and place, all right, what means the most, what matters the most, what's going to allow me to do my best on the day. And yes, do you always want to base it on the swim? No, because it's the shortest and it's the least it's the least important in terms of the amount of time differential you could have because it's just the smallest percentage of distance in time for the entire race. But you do want to look at it as how is it going to complement you maybe for a bike ride? Like if you're a great swimmer and you're not that great of a cyclist and you need a little bit of help, you need to look and learn how to apply. All right, I need to find the toughest swim I can find. And then I need to find a bike that's a little bit easier. So I can distance myself on the swim and it not be super technical for me on the bike. And then traditionally speaking, you'll see a lot of really, really super strong cyclists that are really heavy in the legs struggle with swims that aren't open water because they sink and it's not wetsuit legal. And so again, it's swim.
Well, I just want to put this because you always make a really good point about this. And that may seem insignificant a little bit, that having a tougher swim or whatever, but like how you always talk about how that swim really takes a toll on the bike if you're really struggling in that water or towards the end. You know what I mean? Like people underestimate the amount of energy you could exude in the swim and how that affects your arms and perceived fatigue and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it takes a lot out of you. But your thing is, and I guess like if we're talking about swimming, and I guess it's like turned into a Starkey quote episode, but he's always like, if I'm laying this down and I'm hurting, I know that everyone else is hurting like way worse. Mm-hmm. And so if you take that kind of attitude or approach to the swim, it's like, all right, am I gaining 4 to 5 minutes? Yes. On certain athletes, or am I gaining 4 or 5 minutes here on a swim? Sure. But then when I get to the bike, these athletes have had to struggle to get to their time. They're going to be less fresh getting on their strength. So like you said, it's still important. It's the least important, but it's still a very solid piece because it affects the rest of your race. And again, that goes back to if it's your weakness, you look for the easiest one because you want it to have the least detriment and least detrimental effect to the rest of your race as well. And again, then you kind of move into how do you pick the bike and how does that complement your bike? And is this bike, and yes, this bike course looks great for me, but how does this run course look for me? And if this bike course looks okay for me, but the run course looks great for me, then maybe that's the best option. And again, you're probably never going to find, because you can't pick like wind and heat and all that kind of stuff, because the way things are going now, who the hell knows what any race is going to be anytime it could be. I mean, take Louisville was freezing cold. Texas last year was like super mild. Chattanooga was blazing hot. I mean, just who knows? But these are all things that you need to look at when if you're always trying to look for your best performance, giving your best ability, given the opportunity that the day is going to give you, and measure yourself against the field. And that's what you want to do, is always give yourself the best opportunity to measure yourself against the field. And I say that a lot with my athletes. I'm like, yeah, for me personally, being in the 35, 39 age group, I could place like 10th in my age group, but be like 35th overall. Whereas other age groups, you might get second overall, but you might be 700, or you might get second or third in your age group, but you could be 700th overall, given your age group and the depth and the quality of the field and how many people are in it. And so again, it's always great because it's always the kind of the ultimate equalizer is basing a lot of your performance on the day, on how you ended up doing against the field. Because one year you might. Let's say one year you do a 6-hour half Ironman and you're 800th in the field. But the next year the conditions are more difficult. You didn't PR that course, and let's say you did 6 hours and 10 minutes. But you ended up 350th overall. What would you say is the best performance? Well, I would say the one that had a quote-unquote slower time, because you beat hundreds of more people than you did the year before. And again, it's hard for athletes to look at that way because we get so wrapped up in times and PRs and all these kind of things. But, again, it's like you're battling against yourself, and then again, you're battling against everyone else that's there. And so if you're looking at really setting yourself up for success in a race, to figure out all things considered on how I perform, then you have to sit down and take more time to look at a race than, your friend Johnny T, the triathlete, says, "Hey man, just sign up for Ohio 70.3, man. You want to come with me?" Done. Me too. What kind of course is it again?
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Oh crap, it's hot. The swim is really tough. I'm not a very good swimmer. And oh man, it might not be what's legal. Oh crap, I'm at what's legal. Oh man, again, that's like a week after my family vacation." Or it's one of those seasonal borderline races, which are often the toughest. Chattanooga 7.3 was a great example of that. That was May 20th last year. 4 weeks before that in Nashville, we had a hard time getting athletes in the water for camp because it was like 45 degrees outside. Mm-hmm. So like you look at those seasonal borderline races too, and you're like, am I going to have enough time to get enough, quality, purposeful rides or runs in conditions that are at least going to be somewhat maybe close to what I'm going to have on race day, and how is that going to affect my performance?
Yeah.
There's so many things to take into account, and professionals obviously do this because they're professionals, it's their livelihood. But I think the regular age grouper like you and I and everybody else listening, like, you could do yourself a huge favor by just taking a little bit more time, like, to see, because like, listen, we no longer live in a Ironman world where you have to be ready to sign up at noon race time before it sells out, to rush to a decision. And every athlete deals with this. And yes, you can't plan life either, and that's usually the biggest obstacle, is unplanned life and uncontrolled life. But you can at least set yourself up for best case scenario. And a lot of athletes don't. They have trigger finger mentality, and they just can't wait to hit click, and they can't wait to be a part of the conversation, the part of this. But they're like, oh my god, like, this is like the worst possible race for my abilities, which again can be a pressure builder for some athletes. And so again, I was like, just be diligent and take your time and weigh the options. And if you really are truly trying to find that best performance, then you got to take into account all the things that make up the opportunity for a best performance.
Well, as you're saying that, I kind of was sorting through my own history there, and I think that you basically explained for me why I suck at Ironman Louisville, and I've done that race 3 times. And why I was so mad last year when they canceled the swim, or they shortened it to no basic swim, is that I was really prepared for that swim to at least get out of there without fatigue, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is I just decided or realized, and I think I've known this, but I haven't had the best run, but I have this ability to kind of force through the pain, and I feel like I'm better on hills. So if I'm forcing through pain on hills, that means, like that Starkey example, I know other people are hurting even worse. And out on a flat course like I was, I just couldn't, in other words, I feel like I can almost hold pace on hills the same as I can on flats sometimes towards the end. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's just not necessarily, for whatever reason, a good course for me. And on Chattanooga, I ran faster at Chattanooga. How do you explain that one?
Yeah, I mean,
I've run slower at Louisville 3 times than I have at Chattanooga once, and there's like crazy hills on the backside of that thing.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like there's a lot to take in, and again, like that's why you can't look at if you're a race result matrix Rain Man connoisseur, and you always like to look back on the last 3 to 5 years of race results and where you're going to possibly be and who's racing and how they race. Like, you got to look at it all. You got to look at number one, highest priority is how fit were you really? And because you may have put in a lot more training than you have in other races. So were you in fact more prepared? Sure. But then again, you also look at, all right, was it hot that year? Was it not hot that year? Wisconsin 7.3 is a good example. Last year, it was like rainy and cool and so insanely windy. The previous year, insanely hot. Chattanooga, know the course and know what you're studying or looking at to find past reviews. Last year, yes, it was a fast swim, but it was also insanely hot for that time of year. Previous year, super awesome temps and like a super shortened swim. So look back and you gotta, again, and Louisville's the same way. Last year, freezing death, Antarctica winds. Previous year, a little bit of the same, and then the year before that, I think it was like slightly pleasant. Other races are totally different, so you have to look and again, mix and match and apply that to the race in itself and what might fit your abilities the best, and the likelihood of it being hot, or the likelihood of it being cold, or the likelihood of the bike being windy. Are you okay in the wind? Do you not like the wind? Is it a pressure builder for you? Is it something that you fail in and that you're not patient enough to ride by your power? You have to obsess about speed. All these things play into account of what's going to ultimately set you up for your best day, and acknowledging that and preparing for that and addressing that isn't cowardly, and it's not weak. It's just smart. The smartest and strongest thing a person can do is understand their weaknesses or their fragility in certain areas and do their best to mitigate it. Like, that's called being smart. And that's why you'll find, again, I think, being a cerebral athlete and one that takes things very serious and meticulous.
Thank you.
And like the opposite. And like the night before, he's like, "Hey man, you got an extra helmet? I didn't bring mine." It's like, do these courses set up for being someone who is better off being strategically patient? And so I think it's just one of those things, again, that kind of circles us back to the very beginning of the conversation of being smart and working hard. It's all about, it's like, my mom's favorite phrase when I was growing up, it's like, it's all about how you apply yourself. Because that was like always the hit for me of my teachers. Robbie is very bright. He just doesn't apply himself. And so if you're going to a race day, you want to apply your best self, your best ability, and your best opportunity to perform. And you need to acknowledge that and never be apologetic for it either. You go to a job because you feel like you're good at it. because you can provide a skill that no one else can, or that you're hired to do, that people feel like you can do it as good, if not better, than other people in your same field. Like, you don't apologize for that. Like, you pick things, and you should pick things that give you opportunities to succeed and find out the truest ability of what you can accomplish. You don't, you don't go on a first date and go to some like brand new restaurant that you've heard is terrible, but you're like, I think we should go there anyway and try it. It's like you try to set yourself up for success, and you got to do that with racing too, and just be okay with it, and because it's smart. It's not cowardly and ridiculous. It's just smart.
Yeah. Just one more thing on that Tennessee Iowa game, because you guys were, just because I think it applies.
Yep.
You guys were up, what, 20 at halftime?
20 or 21 at half.
Okay. And then Iowa made this furious comeback and tied the game, right?
They actually came back, and I think they were up 1 at one point.
Okay. And then they got to the end, and you guys held them off, and then it went to overtime, and then overtime they were just done, basically. But I just like to use that analogy because it's sort of like it reminds me of what can happen during a race, is that sometimes you get, if you really struggle and fight your way to get somewhere at certain portions of the race, that really can take a lot of energy, and then it might not leave you anything at the end. You know what I mean? There's something there. There really is. Like they were on fire. They came back, but they're giving 100% again. Back to that early example, it's like they're giving 100% for like 20 minutes, and you guys are like at 85, and then holding on, and then you had gas in the tank at the end in the overtime when it mattered. And I think those kind of things play into racing Ironman. So I guess that's the important thing about pacing. And sometimes we watch sports, and you watch like a lot of these March Madness games, and you watch Duke playing. Well, of course, yesterday wasn't a great example because that team hung around. But a lot of these teams, hanging in or leading at halftime kind of thing, and then they come out and towards the last 10 minutes of the game, the team that paced it and didn't go. The other team was trying so hard for 30 minutes that they just didn't have anything left, and at the end, they just the other team just starts pulling away. And I think that's an important pacing lesson, sort of, because it's one thing to be, you can kind of like scrap your way and claw your way so far, but then you got to have something in the tank, or it's going to get ugly.
Well, and that's why a lot of athletes, I think, like when you take into consideration the, being a cerebral athlete and picking a course that goes best for you is all right, this is a really, really tough swim, and again, you obviously can't predict other people, but I think it's something that you should always take into account is, all right, it's a really, really difficult swim. It's a little bit easier of a bike. I think about this as a guy. I'm like, most dudes blow their load. Most dudes can't just not overdo it. And if they're a terrible swimmer, they're gonna come out of the water and be so hyped up to try and catch everybody because they know they can't swim very well. They're gonna overbike, and while they may pass you on the bike, you will see them on the run. Mm-hmm. And so, like you said, it's just like it's all about endurance racing, and every sport is all about energy expenditure. It's how much energy you have to expend over the course of the day and of course of a race, and how are you going to utilize that, and when are you going to pull the trigger, when are you not going to pull the trigger, when are you going to hold back, when are you not going to back, when are you going to push, when are you not going to push. And it's a dance, and some people can't dance.
But then again, there's that whole thing about getting chased by a dog. If at the end of a race, you probably got something in there somewhere. So how do you find that?
Everyone would have something.
Mm-hmm. All right.
That's mental, but that's a topic for another day.
Title for another day.
Yeah, you can hop back to our, I don't know what podcast is, our podcast with Steve Magnus, because we talked about that with him. Mm-hmm. Was that myth of, I just don't have anything left, but then you get to the finishing chute, and there's that guy and his calf. He's in your age group. You must beat him, because 31st and 30th in your age group is a huge difference. And so you went from barely making it to mile 25 to all of a sudden now you're able to run 8 minutes 8-minute flat for the last quarter mile because all of a sudden you just got it. So ask yourself, why am I sure I didn't have it? Or I just convinced myself that I didn't have it, or I didn't need it. But if things came, it's like that adrenaline rush, like, people in crazy scenarios, like emergency style, scenarios can like pick up cars because adrenaline rushes on a normal day under normal complacent circumstances could probably barely lift up a
soup can.
A soup can, yeah. And then you see them doing something crazy. So again, it's the mind and the human body are incredible machines and incredible things that are capable of doing just amazing things if you can sync them as best you can, as much as possible, then you're good to go.
Yeah. Train your adrenaline control. That's
a tough one.
It's tough, but it's doable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, after the last podcast, man, you really got in my head, and I thought, you know what, I have a long drive here. I saw the Fifth Avenue sitting there on the bottom shelf, as you said, just quietly avoiding every other candy bar almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm a little stiff from the drive, but I'll reach down and picked out a Fifth Avenue candy bar. As Snickers was right there.
Was it big question? And if you're a Fifth Avenue guy or girl, this is a crucial initial question. Was it still all together, or had it already crumbled? Had somebody picked it up and changed their mind? They set it back down, and it was already in two pieces. Was it
fully intact?
Oh, all right.
Nobody was in there.
Probably a fresh batch. Okay.
Fresh batch. I think it was a fresh batch. It tasted fresh.
And
so I reached down. I pulled it. I gotta tell you, I think I would describe it as very delicate.
It is delicate. Yeah.
I almost felt like I needed white gloves to eat that thing. It was really, I felt a little bit more higher class, a little bit maybe candy bar eater.
It's told you it's for it at a different level.
It definitely is. It's sort of like the appetizer. If you went to dinner at like the Vanderbilt Mansion, and it would be like a treat that someone spent all day making.
Mm-hmm.
That I usually don't like. So that's I got to say it didn't cut me though.
So you judged it. But you judged it before.
Well, you were right. It's kind of like a alternative world Butterfinger.
Yeah, it's a much higher level Butterfinger.
Yeah, with flaky crust and.
But let me just say this:
it's like what are those wafer cookie a little bit.
A little bit. I mean, you sound like my son right now. You sound like Hayden, who he prefers his Kraft Easy Mac and Cheese versus, a nice, delicate, thicker, much more tasteful, full noodle at a much nicer restaurant.
You're right.
You just like your Kraft Mac and
right on
Cheese.
that, man.
I know I am.
I'm not that guy yet.
It's all right. It's all right. I don't hold.
I grew up in Wisconsin eating at supper clubs, man.
I know, but hey, whatever. And a side note on candy bars, I would like to know, and feel free to comment this on the Crushing Iron Facebook page. Has anyone ever come into contact with a Honey Stinger waffle and opened it and there have been no crumbs? Because it is without question the messiest item that I ever use I have to eat it over the sink, which is kind of irritating. I mean,
really?
we can land on the moon, but we can't make a Honey Stinger waffle that doesn't crumble. Anyway, besides that was a little.
Maybe it's a lesson in patience.
It's manufacturing garbage.
They're pretty popular, I hear.
They're popular. They're good and tasty.
In your house? Don't you supposed to eat those on the bike or something?
I mean, sometimes if I haven't eaten in a while and I don't want to have anything huge, then I'll have something like really, really, like something small beforehand. So I'll eat it before like a longer run or something.
Honey Stinger Walker, they're delicate, man.
It's like purchasing a bag of chips. You purchase this huge bag and you open it and you have to like get your magnifying glass out to even see where the chips start because it's so far down at the bottom, and you feel like you're wasting it. It's like a jar of peanut butter or a it's like, you can't really get all of it out. So how much peanut butter are you really throwing away? So there's a lot to think about when it comes to food and peanut butter and honey stinger waffles.
So I guess I'm going to give it another chance. I'll give the Fifth Avenue one more shot because sometimes it's stuff you don't like at first becomes your favorite stuff.
Peaky Blinders.
Bingo.
Perfect example.
Yeah. Peaky Blinders.
Hated it. Now I crave it. So give it a shot. If you're out there listening, give Fifth Avenue a shot. And I'm going to check. I'm going to hop over on MSNBC here in the next couple of days and see if the Fifth Avenue stock goes up.
Yeah.
And let's see how that goes. But no.
And let me know when Peaky Blinders is coming back because
I'll try.
I can't believe.
It's been a while. I'm back on The Wire right now, finishing up season 4.
Okay.
And then I got Bosch after that. So, but yeah, it'll be here. And hey, make good use of our Crushing Iron Facebook forum. About 2,000 members in there. If you have any good Netflix suggestions, lay them out there. I'm not a Swift guy or Trainer Road guy. I like to do my intervals or long rides and watch a good Netflix show. So I'm always willing to check that out. And again, we appreciate you joining us. Check out the rest of the things we do at crushingiron.com. And we'll check you again on Thursday.
Yeah. Other than the Vols, man, who do you think's at the Sweet 16? Who do you got here? You think the Vols? I think the Vols can do it, man. They can certainly make the run.
Make the run. We'll see. I'm trying to negative split my bracket challenge.
Okay.
I still have all my Elite 8 teams still in contention.
Whoa, man. You went chalk.
I went close to it, yeah. I also have Houston beating Kentucky.
I've got Houston causing some problems in this tournament.
They're a good team, and they're well coached.
And I don't want to go into that.
Yeah, anyway. But yeah, all my Elite 8 teams are still in there, so I'm hoping for a negative split on making my bracket somewhat useful.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Really disappointed that Duke's pulled that out.
Yeah. Can't stand them.
I know it. I can't either, man. I just don't like what that whole thing does to college basketball.
Yeah, me either.
But whatever. Any closing comments? I think that made some nice points today.
No, not yet. Got a bunch of big stuff coming up, but that's a topic for another day.
We do have a lot of big stuff coming up. And so get out there, work hard, be smart, love what you do.
Have fun, and do your research.
Yep.
And if you have any questions, hit up Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions for me, comments, or concerns, c26coach@gmail.com.
Yep, crushingiron.com. And come on in the closed Facebook group. Search Crushing Iron Group, and we'll let you in there. And other than that, big things on the horizon. We'll talk about them in the next month.
Or 4.
Or 4.
All right.
All right, man. I'll catch you
See
later.
you, man.
Bye.
See you, dude.